she is in her underwear, and it's just.
But like, are they in high school there?
Yeah, I think that was a high school play. I think it even says like that, but they're not.
Then it says one night last week, and then all of a sudden it's like she's shooting a gun and they're living in a house together.
No, yeah, okay. So this one is 10 years ago. Puckshire High School.
Oh, I didn't see 10 years ago.
Yeah, so
okay, so then 10 years. It's 10 years later.
10 years later, they're roommates, and Francine is dating Freddie.
This guy who can't get it up.
No, he doesn't have a problem getting it up. He has a problem,
and she won't let him.
Yes. So there's some hilarious begging, and then
but wait, I want to talk about. So there's this first whole scene in high school where she goes on stage, and I think it's really good, like establishing both Francine and Ketchu's characters.
I think you're right. Yeah, I thought that was really good.
But I didn't see how it was connected in any other way. Like other than unless it was supposed to be like how newspaper comics are just kind of, they have really short stories, and then it's another story again.
Maybe, yeah, I could see that. Like here's a strip.
Yeah,
and like and Terry Moore could. I don't know what happens after this. I did not read the issue 2. I intend to. But it might bounce around from high school to, like you can do whatever you want. You can have flashbacks, and you can have So
it kind of makes sense to start with a flashback, as like where else are we going to put it? But I don't know. I'm hoping it ties in more later. Like there's more flashbacks later in future volumes. I imagine there will be.
It's so funny when Kachu looks out from the camera or from the curtain, and as the toga drops, he's like, "Oh, Francine." It's so funny. And then we cut to their apartment, and they have a 2-bedroom apartment, and Freddie is awkwardly making his advances, and Kachu, the next morning is shooting a gun at the alarm clock. And
she literally shot a gun at the alarm clock, which seems like you can only really do that once.
Yeah, she wakes the whole
new alarm clock.
She wakes the whole house up, and then she has some fun things to say to Freddie, which I thought that was some great dialogue when she calls him.
She's definitely like mean
and sassy and of her own, like
in an attractive way.
And she calls him Ready Freddy.
Ready Freddy. Well, and then you find out that it's like, okay, she's waiting, but he's been like, there's this whole romantic story of, he wants to have sex, and they've been dating for like a year, and she's making him wait for what? Nothing she hasn't really said wait for what. But here comes the twist. What do we find out, Larry?
It's a tension builder for sure.
But so then what does he end up doing? I guess it's not really. I didn't lead you into that very well. But then we find out she comes to his office to kind of surprise him, and he's having sex with his secretary.
Yes.
And so then that more of that begets its own drama of but it kind of surprised me how she reacted. Like she reacted in kind of a non-cliche way, which I like.
I'll hold off on that. I do want to come back to that. But there's also a very tender, romantic comedy sort of, like the two girls are commiserating about her situation with Freddie, and Kachu says, all you have to do is whisper sweet nothings to him like this, and then something like that, and then one thing leads into another, and they nearly have a passionate kiss.
Yeah, and then you see her say like, oh, it was nothing, but then she's like, when she's alone, you see like sobbing on the floor, like it was real. Like
Kachu has strong feelings for Victoria.
Yeah,
Katrina.
It was a well revealed, like it was a good way to reveal that.
Yeah, and then
geez, Francine, it was just a joke. Can't you take a joke? And then when the door slams, crying on the floor.
Crying on the floor.
It wasn't a joke.
It wasn't a joke. It was real, and it was awkward for both of them. It's great. It's so well written with this black and white.
Yeah, it allows it to focus more on the plot. Like there's several plot lines or like each of these characters kind of has their own plot line that is running simultaneously here, and it does a good job of bouncing between them, keeping it balanced.
So we find out.
Everyone.
Yeah, so we find Kachu so
then Kachu and Francine kind of split off their stories, and Kachu goes to like a museum and meets a guy, but she's like pushy against him, and he's kind of like he plays it well to get into her good graces.
I thought he's a cool character.
No, I like him. He's got like a lock of hair in front of his eyes, and he's like sophisticated. He's at a museum. He's got glasses like me. He's
an artist.
Yeah.
He's an artist, and he's interested, and he has a great line in here too, because
he has pretty good lines.
Yeah, so it is raining when she gives him the brush off, and he's just like, wait, let's go get some coffee, and then she kind of gives him more of a brush off, but he's a little more like, I mean, like, let me buy you some coffee, and there's some back and forth as to if you like the coffee, or are you saying yes to you like the art, or yes to the coffee, something along those lines. It's well done, and they make their way back to. Oh, and then here's that scene with Francine barging into Freddy's office, and she strips down to her. She's got the classic overcoat over the sexy underwear, and she bashes into the office, and that's where Freddy's caught with his pants down.
Yeah, so this was where I'd kind of accidentally jumped ahead to, or not jumped ahead, but jumped alongside of.
Yeah.
Like this was going on the same time as the Kachu museum thing.
Uh-huh.
But she goes in there and to her, but she handles it strangely, Larry, which is kind of what I was interested in, was when she finds out that her boyfriend's cheating on her, she doesn't blame the boyfriend, but she blames herself.
I thought this
she's
was
like,
interesting.
oh, I should have. She initially she was afraid that if she had sex with him, then he would leave because she had been he had conquered her. On to the next one.
Exactly.
But now she didn't have sex with him, and she's having sex with someone else. So now it's like, oh well, you're doing it because you're not getting it from me, so you have to get it somewhere else. So I should give it now. And then she starts offering him sex.
Yeah,
but he starts turning it down. Like it wasn't what I was expecting, I guess.
And the offer is, well, it's intense. The way she offers
it's a good scene. They're like in the park. He says to meet in a park, and he's got the secretary in his Porsche while he and Francine are meeting in the park, and she is like breaking down, saying that it's her fault and offering him sex, and then starts taking her clothes off and offering it right there
in the park. And he was there to give her the brush off.
Yeah, he didn't. He was like, "Look, we're over.
We're over." But then Freddy is he's such a strange person, because he's second guessing, like, "Oh, what's going on here?"
He's not supposed to be a likable character, but he did a weird flip there. Like, he made the right move. To move on, he didn't do it the right way, but once he's moved on, he shouldn't go back. I agree with his decision, I guess.
Well, what is his decision? Because
he's breaking up with her.
He's breaking up with her, but
she's not having it.
But she's not having it. So she is almost completely naked here. She's throwing her clothes at him, and then well, then we jump to another scene with I think his name is David and Kachu in the studio. But I want to get to the ending of this, because
let's just keep on this plot line, and then we'll go back to Kachu's plot line.
Because Kachu and David are back at the apartment, or the house. It looks like they live in a house, and there's a crash in the car. And a car has crashed into a tree, and it's Francine, and she's conked out, and and she's
Yeah, it looks like maybe drunk driving or something like that. Like, it's a bad accident, and she's out. Like, I don't know how she even got to the house.
Yeah. And then they get her out of the car and get her into the house, and she reveals that Freddy left her in this state.
Mm-hmm. Well, but, like, left her in that state. I don't really know what that, like...
He's the cause of her being in this state.
Yeah, but it's like, what? How did that make you crash a car?
And what what happened after she got her clothes off? We don't see that.
Yeah, it's kind of a hook because I'm hoping there's some kind of flashback to what happened, but I just assumed that, like,
she became distraught.
Yeah, I guess I thought she got drunk.
Yeah, that's what. Nobody says
but
that,
it doesn't say anything. Like,
yeah.
It doesn't really say it explicitly.
But
it seems like Freddy just walked away.
That's
like he had the girl in the car.
Yeah.
It's not like he was going to stick around. And his options were pretty limited, and it didn't seem like a lot of time passed, but maybe it did.
Maybe it did. I mean, we don't know what the time frame is. I think something happened to her. I think she. I don't know. I want to know what happens to her, so I'm going to keep reading. So, spoiler alert, this is my new favorite comic.
Whoa, Larry.
And there's also a cool little, and she does look really pretty here when, David says, oh man, cause he's the one who helps her into the bed, after the car. He gets her out of the car.
Naked girl out of a car, and he's never even met this girl before, you know?
Yeah. And he says, oh, she's beautiful.
Awkward.
Yeah. And he like,
oh, she's beautiful, and Kachu agrees.
Yeah.
And Larry agrees too.
Yes. So that's it. That's the comic. There
She's
it
a little
is.
plain for me, but I guess supposedly she has large breasts.
Yeah, we can see those. Well, we don't see.
Well, you don't really see them
full, but you get the gist. I think. Yeah, there's a lot of. There's
not even really that much of a gist.
There's a lot of.
Like, as bad or as graphic as the words are, it's not that graphic visually.
There's a lot of short t-shirts and a lot of towels falling off at awkward angles. I think it's very.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of like everyone's wearing like an overcoat.
Yeah.
And like big 80s shoulders.
Yeah, it came out late 90s, so yeah, 80s shoulders. Yeah, that's an unflattering, like, shoulder pads. What were we thinking?
Yeah.
I like this
Larry,
comic.
what were you thinking?
I like this comic a lot. I do love the visuals. I love the black and white. It works really well. I want to meet all of these characters. It reminds me, it's romance, but I think there's a crime element too.
Yeah, so when I was looking on the Comixology categories, it said, genres: crime, leading ladies, LGBTQ, mature, romance, and slice of life. I probably should have read that first. It's also Abstract Studio. We've never done an Abstract Studio, I don't think.
This is published by 3 different, so it came out originally on Abstract Studios. That is Terry Moore's, independent. And then it was picked up by something called, Antarctic Press. And then ultimately it went to Image and finished its run of 90 issues with Image.
Wow.
So a lot could happen to these characters, and the reason there's so many subgenres is because I think a lot of stuff does happen. And like I said, it does have it does have a crime element to it, but it also is truly.
Yeah, we never really got to the crime.
There's also a true romance thing, you know, like everybody.
I would definitely agree with those other categories, and I would say almost all of those categories have hardly been represented in the past seasons. Like there's very few comics I'd say that were. I mean, we had some leading ladies. We had a little bit of romance. We definitely had mature, I guess.
Yeah.
LGBTQ, maybe we had 1 or 2. Slice of life is pretty rare too. I don't know. Maybe we only had a couple representing any of these.